Callie Finn. Normally we're here on Mondays, but today it's Wednesday. So just a quick shout out to that. Guys, make sure you can now catch us every Monday and Wednesday on the WNBA on NBC. So make sure you tune in. I'm here with Callie, and we have some things to discuss around the WNBA because we're in the middle of the trade deadline season, and there have been some trades that have been executed. And so the most recent one yesterday, pretty big name, Brittney Sykes, AKA Slim. That's how everyone knows her and what they call her. But Slim, she got traded from the Washington Mystics, and she is going to the Seattle Storm, Callie. And no more Brittney Sykes in Washington after 3 seasons, so for the most part. So big move in the sense of big name. She was an all-star this year, really great player, great defensive player. And so she's been traded to the Seattle Storm, and Seattle Storm sent out Alicia Clark. And so you're familiar with Alicia Clark, as she used to be on the Aces and you covered her, so you have some familiarity with her. They also sent out a pick, Callie, and they also sent out Zaya Cook, who was immediately waived. That was really, I think, because of just the number of roster spots, right? And so, yeah, that was the trade, Callie. What was your initial reaction to just seeing that trade go down?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we look at it from the Storm perspective, but also the Mystics, it makes sense for both sides, right? Like the Storm is kind of loading up on draft picks. They have maybe like 4 of the top 16 in next year's draft, which is notable, Like they have first round picks from the Aces, which you mentioned, or a first round pick from the Aces, a first round pick from the Sparks. So I think it's like not only are you getting better in the long term, I guess if you look at next season as the long term, but then also just in the present, you have a player like Brittney Sykes who can really improve your offense, shooting, all these different things. I think, not a dig at Alicia Clark, but she went through a shooting slump in July. I think she was like 3 of 16 or something like that in the month from 3. Brittney Sykes is a scorer. She's more accurate beyond the arc, like I think 32% from 3, which is not bad. Like I'm really excited to see her debut with this team because I think that the Storm's offense has gone through kind of like ebbs and flows, And I think that maybe she might be the thing to kind of like turn that tide, if you will, continuing that metaphor. So I think it's interesting for both sides. And we talk about the Mystics. They've obviously been so interesting this year where it's like, they traded Ariel Atkins and they made all these moves where it was like, okay, maybe they're not going to be a contender this year. Like maybe they'll be competing to be for that bottom spot. And then that can help them in the future, with like draft picks and things like that. But then their young core, Sonia Citron, Kiki Iriafen, has been so promising. So it's like, clearly they're investing in that. The Mystics have a ton of picks and they might still be dealing, like they might send Aaliyah Edwards somewhere and get a big return on that. What about Stephanie Dalton?
For
So this is
sure.
like a win on both sides. And then, yeah, you see the stats. I'm
For
sure
sure.
you can
Can we put the
dive
stats
into
back
that.
up? Because I want to stick on the side of the Storm and this trade that's happening just with the 2 main players. And so with Brittney Sykes going for Alicia Clark, like you can see the difference in production that you're going to be getting between the 2. And so Callie, you mentioned the fact that the offensive production is going to be a lot more. And Brittney Sykes, I don't think really addresses like their 3-point shooting, which is a big deal. She is a slightly better than Alicia Clark, but she 15.4 points versus 3.5 points. Just right there at the outset, you see it. At this stage of their careers, I'm going to go ahead and say Brittney Sykes is the better defender, right? And she gets to the free throw line a lot. That's where a lot of her points come from. And the ability to have someone, especially in the postseason, who can get to the free throw line, I think is going to really pay dividends. So in that regard, I think she's going to be really good for them. They already have the second best defense in the league. And so when you add another player like Brittney Sykes who can defend the way that she does, what they always say, defense wins championships. And so you're going to be able to add her already to a really impressive defensive team. But I do think that's going to help to take some pressure off of Skylar Diggins and take some pressure off of Nneka, because when they have to give so much on defense, then that inhibits their offense. And I think that lends to some of the inconsistency you see for Seattle. So I think in those ways, she's really going to help make Seattle better in that way. And Seattle, in my opinion, they were the one team that like the Atlanta Dream were inconsistent at times this season, just like the Storm, but they've seemed to have turned it around. But the Storm have still been inconsistent, and they dropped 3 in a row. They lost again last night. They didn't have the services of Brittney Sykes yet, so they lost 3 in a row. And so I think she'll be a boost to the offense. I think Erica Wheeler can go back to the bench, and not because she's not playing great, but now you have her coming off the bench as a 6th person. You insert Brittney into the starting lineup. I'm assuming that's what they're going to do. We haven't seen it yet, but I think this just gives them a lot of more variation with their lineups. And I think now, I wouldn't pick them to win it all, but I think now I can at least really consider them as a potential contender, because I was sort of like, they're definitely not up there with the Liberty or Lynx. But do I think they're like as good as Atlanta? Do I think they're as good as the Mercury? And I wasn't sure, because they're I think Roz, when I was on with her last week, called them Dr. Jekyll and Hyde, Callie. So I think this makes them more legitimate.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so interesting that you say that about kind of like what their status as a contender, because I think if you look at the league overall, it doesn't look like it, but things are kind of wide open. Like if even you mentioned all of the issues that the Storm have had, like being inconsistent, dropping 3 straight, there's still what, like only if there is like 3 games or something behind the Lynx, which lead the league. And I think if you look down, like just at the picture overall, all any team needs up until like 8th in the standings is just a really good stretch, like a good winning stretch. And then the standings could completely change. So, I mean, that's something that stands out to me with the Storm is like, maybe they didn't look like a contender this week, but like at the end of the next 2 weeks, we could be having a completely different conversation.
For sure. I mean, if she fits the way that, if she gets to the ceiling of what she could be with this team, sure, they could be like really legit. And in terms of moving up in the standings, for sure they could. Because honestly, the Lynx have a big gap over the field right now. But after that, everybody else is actually still close together. So like, honestly, even though Seattle's in 6th, and even a team that you cover that we'll talk about later, the Aces are in 7th. The Aces really could move up still to 3rd or 4th if they could string together some wins. So I think you're right that everyone's so close together after like from 2 down that there's really the potential still for a lot of movement in this second half of the season. I just think like we saw New York make moves, we saw the Lynx make moves, and Atlanta's like going right now. And I just felt like Seattle was the one team that we sometimes talk about as a contender. And I was like, before the trade deadline, before we knew what was going to happen, before the trade broke, I said, if they don't make a trade, I can't take them seriously. And then like literally hours later, a trade came. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what Brittney looks like on this team. But there is, a Washington component of it. You mentioned it already. I think Washington signaled that they're going full rebuild. And they said that in the offseason, but because they were sort of like towing the line of like, we can make the playoffs this season, right? It's like they're ahead of development. And so I think it was unclear whether they were going to, if Brittney Sykes was going to be part of their future. We've heard things about Aaliyah Edwards being on the trade block. And so I think yesterday was a signaling like, yeah, the coach is saying like, we're still trying to make the playoffs, but I think they're okay if they don't make the playoffs. I think they're saying we're rebuilding and it's going to be through the draft, and this is going to be our team of the future based on these young prospects.
Yeah. I mean, do you want to talk more about the Mystics or?
No, I didn't know if you had anything to add. I was just like echoing your point and saying like, I agree.
Yeah, I think one thing that stands out to me, I guess, for this move with the Mystics is that Alicia Clark being, I mean, if she remains in DC, I guess like we still got 24 hours or so until the trade deadline is like closed and I guess things are settled. But if she does stay there, I do think that like regardless of the goal of the Mystics this year, like you mentioned, like it's looking like rebuild and playoffs, whatever. But I think that her presence could be huge for like the younger players that are there. Like, and I think that that's something that I've come to really respect about Alicia Clark. Like when you look at kind of like her story, how she's been like her longevity in the league,
Yeah.
a lot of what has made her last is like it's intangible stuff. It's like off the court stuff. It's the way she prepares for games. I mean, I think for players like Kiki and Sonia to be able to maybe like be around her, if that's how things unfold, that could be really significant for like their development. Also, Alicia could get more playtime, like with the Mystics. Like that could maybe it'll be a different fit. I do think it's interesting because a lot of people thought, okay, well, Alicia is leaving the Aces because she wants to retire where it all began in Seattle with the Storm. She's like the current oldest player in the league right now. I've not heard her say that that was her plan. So I don't want to like say like, oh, her retirement plans are ruined or anything. But I do think like if this ends up being her final season, it could still be a really interesting one, is my point.
Yeah, and she doesn't quite have the history with Washington that she does Seattle, but it is a former team of hers, and
Yeah.
so a lot looks different since she was there in 2022. But it's a former team of hers, and I'm glad that you brought up Alicia Clark because I think I want to make clear, and this is not something Seattle has spoken about, but I know that they as a group and organization really value Alicia Clark. I think largely she was moved because her contract is the only contract that really could have netted them a real asset, and that's what it came down to. I'm sure if they could have kept Alicia and added Slim, they would have, but I just don't think that could have worked out for this year. And so the numbers definitely don't tell the story with her. She's a defensive specialist, and she's had a lot of adversity in the last couple of years. So I hope that like the rest of this later half of the season can be fruitful for her or be positive or whatever it is. Just bring her positive vibes. But I agree with any young group, you need a veteran in there. We don't know if anything's going to happen with Stephanie Dolson. So still having a couple of vets around is a good thing because Kiki Irifen said that this was her welcome to the WNBA moment. Like just seeing the realness of it. Like it doesn't happen in college like this, and just seeing, a trade up close like that and losing teammates. It's a lot. So I'm not surprised that the Mystics lost last night. They had to adjust on the fly without Brittney for the first time, and Chicago Sky was hungry for a win. So they finally snapped their losing streak. So I'm interested to see how they move forward, but I agree with you. I like this trade. I think Seattle had to do something, and I like what they did. So we'll see what happens. And I mentioned there were trades like that already happened. So earlier in the week, or like over the weekend, Sunday I believe it was, DiJonai Carrington got traded to the Minnesota Lynx. And, I made like a joke on X. I said, oh, they lost out on the Emma Meesseman sweepstakes, but they said they're leaving here with something, I, and I saw someone ask the question, who's the bigger pickup or like which player will have more impact, DiJonai Carrington or Emma Meesseman? And there's a lot of people just like, what? It's crazy because, I think most people would agree that Emma Meesseman is the better player. But I don't think in the terms of that question that like it's just about who's the better player. It's about what that team needs and what you do for that team. And so right now, I get that the Liberty are going through things, but to me, it's hard not to say the Lynx are the best team in the league. They have the #1 record. They have the best net rating, offensive rating, defensive rating, all the things. Everything says that they're the best team in the league, but they have the best defense, and they just added another great defensive player in DiJonai Carrington. And she was having somewhat of a down year this year. She won Most Improved Player last year while she was still a part of the Connecticut Sun. She gets traded to the Dallas Wings. Her numbers went down a little bit, 10.4 this season. She was dealing with the injury, but she was averaging nearly 13 points last year. Callie, last night, I get it, it's only one game, 13 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. She had a block, right? And her field goals, she shot really well last night. And so I like this pickup for Minnie. I think it's a win-win. What do you think?
I think we talk about this a lot on when you and I get together. We talk about fit. And I do think that this is a good example of that. Like with Dallas, DiJonai was in a different role than she had previously been in, and it was an expanded role. And with the Lynx, it's clear what they're asking her to do. I heard Cheryl Reeve say, post game, we just want her to do what's intuitive for her. You know what I mean? Like, and there's a very clear role that's like etched in stone for DiJonai. So I think That's what stands out to me about this. It makes a lot of sense, and it seems like it's going to work, especially after that first performance that we saw.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to more, but we're going to stop there and make sure you're tuned in with us every week for the WNBA on NBC so we can keep paying attention as the season winds down.